In this Warmaster video we return to the Norse Army and see how their army list has changed in the years since I first reviewed it. Are they better than ever, or is there still room for improvement? So the Norse Army in Warmaster still represents the fantasy version of Vikings, strongly influenced by Norse mythology. The core of the army revolves around its solid infantry, supported by more fantastical units and monsters. The original Norse army list had a number of issues which I identified in my previous video, primarily around the points costing of a number of units. And when we look at the current version of the list, you can see that all of the issues that I identified have now been addressed. So let's take a look at the changes in more detail and discover if there is now more than one way to build a Norse army. Firstly, we have bondsmen, which are your core medium infantry. They are 60 points a unit, and you must take at least 2 units per 1,000 points of the army. They have the standard medium infantry profile and are an excellent unit. They can support your other infantry types in the army, but even on their own they're a force to be reckoned with. 4 units of bondsmen in line, arranged 2 at the front and 2 in support, can reliably bounce a cavalry charge from 2 units of knights in the open. Hussars are your heavy infantry choice, and they've retained the same stats as before, but seen a minor points increase to 110. This was needed to bring them in line with other heavy infantry units such as trolls, black orcs or dwarfs, all of whom Hussars can reliably beat in close combat. And while 4 units of bondsmen can hold up a cavalry charge, Hussars can do it with a single unit supported by bondsmen, able to stop 2 units of charging knights in their tracks. Huntsmen are a standard missile infantry unit available in unlimited numbers, and they provide the Norse army with a tactical option lacking from many other close combat themed armies. Huntsmen are good to brigade with your bondsmen, or they operate just fine on their own out of dense terrain. Berserkers are still the same. They are a standard fanatic infantry unit, so can either be sacrificed as a missile screen to protect your other more valuable units, or used as flank support for your infantry brigades to deter cavalry charges, as berserkers in column formation still generate a high number of attacks to their flanks. Ulfwerner have received a couple of positive changes. Firstly, and most importantly, they can now brigade with other units, which makes them far more viable within the army. They've also received a modest price discount of 5 points, so they now cost the same as Hussars at 110. Although still vulnerable to missile fire, Ulfwerner can cause so many attacks on the charge that they're a danger to even the heaviest armoured troops. And the fact that you can now brigade them alongside other infantry means that the other infantry will add their support to any combat. Although Ulfwerner can still operate just fine on their own in terrain as kind of all-terrain chariots. Norse cavalry are still the same and provide the army with a much needed mobility option. Although not as powerful as knights, you can take cavalry in quite large numbers, which helps tip the balance in any cavalry clashes. The only thing I would change is their name, which is rather uninspired, and my personal preference would be to call them Norse Horse. The Storm Giant has received a 10% discount along with all other giants in other armies, and there's been a clarification which means he does count as charging when moved into combat via the Giant Goes Wild table. Other than this, he is still the same, and with his leaner price tag of 135, you might now be able to squeeze 1 or 2 into your army to act as bouncers for your infantry brigades. The War Mammoth has also received a 10% discount and now costs 180. The Mammoth is essentially a tougher and more reliable version of the Giant, and can brigade with other units. The main reason to take a Mammoth, however, is if you play a siege game. As Mammoths are big enough to attack enemy troops positioned on the walls, they can also batter the walls down and can act as living siege towers for your infantry. Valkyries have received the single greatest change in the army list. No longer are they a unique unit with convoluted special rules, only available if you take a shaman with a specific magic item. Now they're a standard flying monster unit equivalent to Pegasus Knights from the Bretonnian list. You can now take 2 units of Valkyries per 1000 points, and with their reduced price of 80, they represent a much more reliable option of flyers for the army. Jarls, Heroes and Shaman are still the same, with a character pack similar to that in the Chaos Army. The Werekin character upgrade remains the same as your Terror option in the army. It's still too cheap in my opinion, as Demons pay 50 points for the nearest equivalent, and Demons are far scarier than the Norse. The Werekin is even better than the Vampire Count's Black Coach, as it costs the same but doesn't apply any terrain restrictions. Still, the community seems happy with it, so I just guess I'll let this one lie. The Horn of Resounding has also received a much needed change, as it's no longer a prerequisite for taking Valkyries in the army. It's simply now a chariot upgrade for the Shaman, equivalent to the pay wagon for the Paymaster in the Dogs of War army. It grants +1 command for 1 turn. So in summary, all the issues I identified in the original video about the Norse army appear to have been addressed, with the exception of the Werekin. Generally speaking, units are now more appropriately costed, and Valkyries and Ulfwerner in particular now have a viable role within the army. So next let's take a look at the spell list. The Norse spell list remains the same, which is a good sign that the writer got it right first time. The only clarification needed was to the Eye of the Raven spell, which clarifies that this only affects a d6 rolled by the Norse player. Norse players may also be pleased to hear that there's now an entire 3D printable Norse range available to order from Cromarty Forge. You can order the entire range of models direct, or download the STLs to print them yourself. It features suitably sturdy looking Huskarls, ferocious Ulfwerner, a battle-ready Storm Giant, and mounted Valkyries. Mace Face Miniatures also previously released a Dark Norse range, however these may no longer be available. And as always, if metal miniatures are more your thing, then Callistra and Pendraken have got you covered. So now let's take a look at some players' painted armies. So what tactics work well for the Norse army? Well, we can look at some of the games played by veteran Norse player Murray Palmer to get an idea. Here we can see a classic double infantry line with archers and Huskarls on the front, supported by bondsmen. We can see 2 brigades of 4 infantry units in mutually supportive positions. In between the 2 infantry brigades are 2 giants. By placing the giants at the hinge of this formation, they pose a countercharge threat against any enemy unit which charges either of the infantry brigades. You could swap giants for mammoths if you wish, as mammoths have the added bonus of being brigaded with your infantry rather having to receive a separate order. The mammoth's broader base frontage also means it can apply terror to up to 3 enemy stands at once. So they're a good defensive addition to your battle line to deter enemy charges. Here we can see this tactic in action as enemy heavy cavalry have charged into Ulfwerner with a mammoth attached and into the Huskarl supported by bondsmen. The terror from the Mammoth will reduce the Knight's charge bonus, whilst the high number of attacks from the Mammoth and the Ulfwerner should be enough to cut through the Knight's heavy armour. Meanwhile, the infantry should beat the cavalry simply with support. The Mammoth and the Ulfwerner can then pursue the retreating cavalry. An alternate way to run Mammoths is in smaller brigades attached to 2 infantry units, Huskarls supported by bondsmen. As previously discussed, 2 units of enemy knights charging the Huskarls in the front will bounce. The Mammoth protects one flank of the infantry brigade, whilst dense terrain protects the other. This means the enemy are going to have to invest a significant portion of their army to defeat this brigade. And this speaks to the Mammoth's hidden strength. It does attract an awful lot of enemy attention. Mammoths also have an awful lot of hits to chew through, so they can reliably tie up the enemy's best units for a number of turns. So if you want to play defensively, take a Mammoth. Once you've fixed the enemy heavy hitters in place against your immovable infantry plus Mammoth brigade, you can reliably counterattack with your own heavy hitters such as Berserkers or Ulfwerner. Here we can see Berserkers have snuck around the flanks of Empire infantry whilst the Knights are engaged elsewhere. The Berserkers can reliably cut down both units of Empire troops before the enemy can neutralise them, and this is a good example of peace trading. Here we have an example of the archetypal Norse Huskarl list, with maxed out Huskarls supported by bondsmen. The idea here is that you form a solid, wide battle line with your flanks secured by terrain. You wait for the enemy to charge you and bounce off your solid line of Huskarls. The addition of 2 terror-causing characters helps to achieve this aim. You can then counterattack and drop Valkyries behind the enemy cavalry that attacked you, ensuring their destruction when they retreat. This list is more balanced and gives you several options. You still have a solid core of infantry, but with the addition of Berserkers and Ulfwerner you can build a heavy hitters brigade to counterattack the enemy and dig them out of dense terrain. You also have a cavalry brigade which can be used to intercept enemy cavalry, and a giant who will protect the flanks of your infantry line. You also have some shooting, some terror and a horn of resounding. You could also try a terror themed list, which has 2 terror-causing characters and 2 shaman to cast Aspect of Wulfen, giving you potentially 4 terror-causing units each turn. You have your solid infantry line supported by fast attack and heavy hitters. This is a more aggressive list where the idea is that you take the fight to the enemy. You also have the Monster Mash list, where you add a monster, either a giant or a mammoth, to a brigade of 2 other infantry, usually Huskarls supported by bondsmen, to form 4 very tough brigades. Your cavalry and Valkyries can be held in reserve to counterattack the enemy that bounce off your tough units. Finally, you have the option to do an infantry horde by focusing on the cheaper units in the list, such as bondsmen, huntsmen and berserkers. This can work well against undead or skaven, as your infantry will severely outclass the enemy infantry and you can grind them down in a war of attrition. So that is the Norse Army in 2025, and as we can see, the main problems of the original list have now been ironed out. You still have a fantastic opportunity for conversions with this army, as you may choose a Dark Norse theme and replace your Vikings with more mythological beings such as Draugr, Einherjar and Trolls. The Norse army still retains its position as one of the best heavy infantry armies in Warmaster, but what changes may lie over the horizon. Well, currently there are no plans to change anything more to the list, and a few minor points tweaks aside, I think the list plays pretty much as intended now. With the addition of some fantastic 3D printable model support, this year is now a great time to try the Norse army for yourself, and I hope this video has given you a few ideas to allow you to do just that.